I'm ready to talk about my favourite films of 2021. And there's limited storage on my laptop right now, so I'm so worried this video is going to be like an hour and I'm going to have to really cut it down because I can't upload an hour file on my laptop, and then it's stressful because I have to delete a bunch of stuff and get my hard drive involved, and it's just going to be a nightmare. So I'm really hoping I can keep this brief. So this best of the year list is going to be films that came out in the cinema in 2021. Obviously films that I saw in the cinema. I can't include films in the ranking that I didn't see. So I saw 34 films in the cinema in 2021, which is pretty low for me. My average is usually about 60-70, but because of pandemic it was a bit lower, but it's much better than the number of 12, which is the number that I saw in 2020. So we're improving on 2020, and I hope that we improve again in 2022. So yeah, out of those 34 films that I saw in the cinema, I whittled it down to a list of 10, and obviously there are other films that I watched in the year that, you know, were not in the cinema that I discovered for the first time that are not going to be on this list, but I might do a little honourable mention thing at the end because there's just so many good movies and I want to talk about them all. So we're starting off at number 10 with Zola, which I saw obviously in the cinema. That I just spent a minute explaining how all of the films are ones that I saw in the cinema in 20, like why did I not click that? But Zola is a film based on the very iconic 148th thread, I think it was, on Twitter, that was posted by Zola King, and she basically explained this crazy story of how her and this other girl went on a trip to Florida to dance at some strip clubs, and it all went terribly wrong. And I just love the way that Zola was made. It was shot on film and it's beautiful, it's dreamy, it's hypnotic. But I think it was such an interesting format to tell a story that is so much about technology. Throughout the film there are many buzzes and calls and dings that come into the various characters' phones, and it just really adds to that sense of building anxiety that, you know, runs through the film already. And I just thought it was a really interesting choice to shoot it on film because it really evokes that sense of old Hollywood, that sense of glamour, that sense of like, you know, times gone by, and it felt like it was really like memorializing the effect that technology has had on us, and it was like a really interesting, also jarring like cocktail, and it was just very compelling and dreamy and all of that good stuff, and the performances were impeccable, and I just think it was a really great film. And it suffers a little bit from the fact that we already know how that story is going to play out because we all saw the viral Twitter thread, but it remains compelling and the performances are great, and I really recommend it. My number 9 of the year was Eternals, and if you've seen my favourite first watches for November and December, I've already gushed about how much I loved Eternals, about how much it was a celebration of effortless diversity, and I just thought it was so refreshing to have a Marvel movie that didn't feel sanitized, it felt authored and it felt nurtured, and I really want more films like that where we're not just, you know, paring them down to the lowest common denominator so they appeal to the mass amount of people possible. Films that have personality, that show the breadth of the human and superhuman experience, and I just thought it was wonderful, and I think Chloe Zhao was a master, and I'm so excited to see Eternals 2 whenever that's coming out. I'm just ready for it. I'm just ready for big budget films that have a sense of personality, that have a sense of authorship, that feel like they've earned their spot in those top 10 earnings of the year or whatever, because they always end up there anyway. My number 8 of the year was The French Dispatch, which again I already mentioned in my favourite first watches, but it's basically impossible for Wes to release a new film and for it not to make it to my top 10 of the year because he is just such a wonderful creator, imaginator, filmmaker. I just always come out of his films feeling smiling and feeling hopeful for the state of the film industry. I've talked at length about how disheartening it is to see big budget Disney films just dominate the cinema, and the fact that it's really increasingly harder and harder for original stories, for indie films to make it. For example, in my Spider-Man review I talked about them cancelling screenings of Nightmare Alley to make way for Spider-Man, and if Guillermo del Toro, who is an Oscar winner and his last film won Best Picture, if he can't get his film screened, there is no hope for literally anyone else trying to make it into the film industry. And so while Wes Anderson is a seasoned filmmaker, this isn't a debut that's had to like fight its way onto the screen. It is something that I think is worth celebrating, and I just came away feeling lovely, feeling hopeful, and feeling like I just witnessed some real art from a singular creator who is just so unique, and no one else is making films like him, and I just feel very honoured to be able to see them whenever he makes one. So even though the film is a little bit messy and it's not perfect, it's a story of 3 vignettes and it throws quite a lot at you in quite a short space of time, and it is quite hard to catch up, and there is not a lot of moments of relief in it. It's definitely not perfect, it's not my favourite Wes Anderson film, but it's one that I'm excited to return to and one that I would recommend to people, and just like I said, I'm very forgiving of filmmakers like Wes Anderson who just have so much visual flair and style, and you just feel like they're making films for the love of the craft and just have such a respect for stories and filmmaking and visual cinema, all of that stuff. Yeah, he's wonderful. And my favourite Wes Anderson film is Moonrise Kingdom, so if you haven't seen that, please get on that. It's wonderful. Number 7 is Last Night in Soho, directed by Edgar Wright. Again, another sort of visionary filmmaker that is, you know, really exciting whenever they have a new film out, and I will always go and see it. I went to see Last Night in Soho for my 24th birthday. I took a couple of friends to a cinema in Notting Hill called the Electric Cinema, which was just the perfect place to see it because it was this beautiful vintage cinema, and I just felt like we'd stepped back in time, which obviously mirrors the events of the film Last Night in Soho, which is a film about the dangers of nostalgia, and we follow Eloise, who has just moved to London to do fashion, and she really romanticizes the past, and she starts having these dreams of, you know, this beautiful idyllic woman who is, you know, in the 60s trying to make it big as a singer. She has these big dreams and big ambitions and she wants to realise them. But as these visions continue, Eloise is seeing danger creep in, and she really worries for the fate of the girl in her dreams. And then these dreams start to not really be dreams anymore. And I'll leave it there because spoilers. But yeah, as always, Edgar Wright has such a command over the visual style, and he knows so much about cinema. He does a lot of articles for Empire, A Sight and Sound, and he programs, you know, scenes at the BFI, and he just has such a knowledge of British film history, of general film history, and whenever he recommends films I just never know what they are because he's just so well versed and really picks out these obscure gems that people haven't heard of. And you can just tell that Last Night in Soho is so well researched and is such a love letter to those films that were popular at that time, and even the casting reflects that. He cast a lot of people who were in those iconic films that he is referencing, and I just thought it was a really well crafted story that is also beautiful in visuals. And even though the ending slightly let it down for me, I still gave it 4 stars. I thought it was a really interesting exploration, and I really always would love to see another Edgar Wright film. He just has so much originality and flair, and again, just a passion for the craft that just comes across on screen. So that brings us on to my number 6 choice, which was Another Round, and I think everyone has heard about this film by now. It was up for a lot of Oscars and it won Best Director, maybe? Best Foreign Film? It won something, and it was very much deserving of that. So in Another Round, we're following a bunch of teachers who sort of come up with this hypothesis that if you are a little bit drunk every day, your life will be better. So they embark on this journey, and they're documenting it for a kind of joke thesis, but then they get a bit too involved with it, where they drink more and more amounts of alcohol each day, and they're recording what happens to them and how it affects their lives and their relationships and their careers. And obviously this snowballs a little bit and gets a little bit out of control. But obviously more than a film about drinking, it is a film about life and a film about friendship and enduring friendship, and is just very heartwarming in a way that doesn't feel sensationalist or sentimental. It's just very raw, and yeah, I really enjoyed it. And you can tell it's quite a powerful film, and I, as a young 24-year-old woman, relate to a film about like 56-year-old men who don't speak my language. You know, it just transcends all of that, and it's a film about humanity and who we are at a core, and it is just very wonderful. My number 5 pick is Spencer, which I again talked at length about in my November-December favourite first watches. It seems that a lot of my favourites of the year are coming from the last half of the year. I don't know if that's like intentional or if there's just something in the water in the last half of the year, I don't know, but Spencer was just absolutely stunning. It feels like a waking nightmare. It's like a story that's made mythic. It's just so magical without it being a romanticization of anything. It feels very gothic and very surreal, like you are wandering through a dream. It is so hypnotic, the way the camera moves and the visuals, just absolutely stunning. And like I said in my other video, I am very critical of the royal family as an institution. I don't believe it should exist. I'm very anti-royals, and I don't really buy into the sort of frenzy that there seems to be around Princess Diana. I think she was a great activist and a great human, and it's obviously heartbreaking what happened to her and the way that the institution made her feel about herself. But this film doesn't fall into that trap that I think a lot of other depictions of Diana have fallen into, where they present her as like this martyr who is, you know, not capable of doing anything wrong. You know, it's very much a critique of that institution without painting Diana as this sort of, you know, I don't know, yeah, martyr-like figure, I would say. And Kristen Stewart is absolutely incredible in the role, and I would recommend it to absolutely everyone. And that brings us on to my number 4 pick, which is The Lost Daughter, directed by Maggie Gyllenhaal, which is a really, really special cinema experience for me because I saw it at the BFI London Film Festival in October, and I had accidentally booked myself into the premiere. So Maggie Gyllenhaal was there, and Olivia Colman was there, and Dakota Johnson was there, and Jessie Buckley was there, and probably more people that I'm leaving out, and sorry. But I just got blindsided by Maggie and Olivia, and oh, it was just wonderful. And I have since read the book that it's based on by Elena Ferrante, and it was just... it's such an impeccable adaptation. In the introduction that she did before the film, Maggie Gyllenhaal talks about being, you know, so entranced with the novel and how it felt like these taboo secrets that women keep had finally been spoken out loud, and you know, by doing so you set them free, you know. And she really, really hoped that if people brought their mothers and their sisters and their friends to see The Lost Daughter, it would speak aloud these taboos and these sort of dark desires and these things that we are ashamed of, and it just blows them up tenfold, and then you realise that you're not alone in thinking those things. And she really hoped that it would be like a bonding experience for women that go and see it together. And I have yet to have that experience. I want to show it to my mum, and then hopefully we'll talk about it and have that experience. But just on its own, Lost Daughter is incredible. It's hypnotic and alluring, but it's also so uncomfortable to watch in a way. You just feel very uneasy throughout the entire runtime, and it just has this thrumming pulse of sort of, I guess, anxiety and guilt, and you know, all of that is wrapped up in our main character Leda, who is played perfectly by Olivia Colman. And I know she already got an Oscar very recently for The Favourite, but she deserves another one for this because it's just, Leda is such a complex character, and you really require someone with, you know, humanity and grace and generosity of spirit to really get into the darker elements of her and humanize them, because she is a human, and it's not fair to demonize her for, you know, certain unforgivable things that she may have done. I'm not going into detail because you need to watch it, but it is just absolutely incredible, and go watch it. It's on Netflix. No excuses. My number 3 of the year was another one that I saw at the BFI London Film Festival, and that is Compartment No. 6. And I think I've already spoken about this in a favourites video as well. You know, it makes sense. They're my favourites. And in Compartment No. 6 we are following two strangers on a train, which obviously is a formula that we have seen before. We have seen this, like, two people who are worlds apart meet and then they form a bond together, but it is so much less cliche than it sounds, and it's so much about the fact that, again, cliche, the journey is more important than the destination, but the film is just very beautiful in the way that it goes about exploring that theme. At the beginning, these two characters are sharing a compartment in the train, and they're travelling from Moscow, I think it is, to Murmansk, and we're following an archaeologist who wants to see the petroglyphs, which are these old ancient cave drawings, and she's very, very obsessed with finding this thing, this stable thing that has been on Earth for thousands and thousands of years, because she in her life is very unmoored and very lost, and she's really, really craving this thing that is solid. But actually what matters is not the solid thing that she's in search of, but this really fleeting interaction in front of her with her cabin mate, who is initially threatening, but then once they start to speak to each other and bond, they form a really, really beautiful connection and friendship. And I just thought the film was wonderfully performed, and just, yeah, really simple and sweet, and again, speaking to, like, the depths of what it is to be human, you know, just very, very beautiful. And my number 2 pick is another film I saw at the festival, and that is Petite Maman, which is the newest film from Celine Sciamma, who did Portrait of a Lady on Fire, which I've yet to see. But Petite Maman is just incredible. It's a story about grief and about childhood and about nostalgia, and it's just beautiful. And at a 70-minute runtime, how can she pack so much emotion and love into this? I just don't get it. I just don't understand it. But we're following a little girl who has just recently lost her grandma, and that has really sort of splintered her little family apart, and she is playing in the woods one day where she meets another little girl who looks very like her, and then you find out that this other little girl is actually her mother as a child. And it's sort of magical realism, but their friendship that blossoms is just really, really gorgeous, and just, it just makes your heart ache in so many places, and it's just, yeah, it's incredible. And the two child actors, I mean, I don't like children very much. I think, you know, I find them quite irritating. So when I'm praising child actors, you know that they're good, okay? You know they're good and not annoying. But yeah, I recommend this film to absolutely everyone. It's just so stunning, and it's just a masterclass in succinct storytelling that doesn't scrimp on emotion, and is just so beautiful. And so we've made it to my number 1 pick of 2021. And it is Limbo! And it feels a bit weird to say it in like a yay way, because this film devastated me. But Limbo is a film that is just so heartbreaking and charming in equal measure, and I have no idea how it does that. We're following these refugees who have come to the UK in search of a better life because they're fleeing war-torn countries, and they end up in a sort of halfway house situation in Scotland, in this little island off the coast of nowhere. It is desolate, it is bleak, it is so far removed from the sunny, beautiful countries that these people have come from. And like the title of the film, they feel in limbo. They don't exist anywhere. They are dehumanized. They feel transient. They feel like no one is really looking out for them. They feel like their lives are on pause in this place. And on the one hand, it is a damning indictment of this country's government and this country's refugee system, that these people are made to wait this long and are made to feel like they don't matter. But then on the other hand, you have these incredible moments of humanity where these people come together in the most hopeless of circumstances, and they make each other feel warm, and they make each other feel loved, and they create something sweet and lovely and good out of something that should never be allowed to happen. And it just made me feel so emotional, and it's getting to me now because I just can't shake the feeling that, you know, with the way that the world is and the impending climate crisis, people are going to be displaced. Countries and areas are going to be overrun with water, or they're going to have droughts and they're going to lose food. It's already happening. And in the years to come, when people are facing loss of homes, loss of lives from climate devastation, we're going to need to be so much kinder to people, or we're going to need to be able to open our doors. We're going to need to be able to collaborate with other countries and offer solutions that help people. And I just don't see that happening with the way things are now. And it's genuinely quite terrifying. But this film is just so wonderful, and I can't think of another film that has managed to so elegantly balance utter devastation and anger with moments of beauty and warmth and love. And it is just, it's wonderful. And if you haven't seen it, run to wherever you can see it, because it is just incredible. And there we have it. That's my top 10 out of the films that I saw in the cinema this year. I did say I was going to do some honourable mentions, but the only ones that are really coming to mind that I watched sort of backlisted in 2021 was Clue, which is just silly and wonderful, and if you love Knives Out, you'll love Clue. But I watched that on Amazon Prime, and it was just absolutely incredible, and it would be on this favourites list if I was doing it in favourites of, you know, everything that I watched. And also Promising Young Woman, which I saw in 2021, that was one of my favourites of the year, a very early favourite, but I didn't see it at the cinema. And you all already know what I feel about that film, and I'll link the video I did discussing it in the description if anyone wants to see it. But yeah, those would be my honourable mentions if I had to pick some. And yeah, thank you so much for sticking with me throughout this video, and I will see you very soon with another video soon. Bye.